Hello and welcome along to the latest episode of Rovers Chat. I'm joined as per by Robbie Andrews from Radio Sheffield. Robbie, how are we doing?
Yeah, really good, Ricky, thank you.
Good stuff. Let's get straight into it then. A win at last. I mean, obviously we're going to this game last Saturday at Wimbledon, one in 17, weren't it? Kind of everyone, wanting and praying for the form to turn around, and it was they didn't do it the easy way, did they? A dramatic win, but a win nevertheless.
Yeah, and of all places for it to come, a ground they've never won at before. It's been a horrendous run over the past 3-4 months, hasn't it? And, Rovers are by no means out of the woods just yet, but it's certainly a start and a real gritty type performance as well. They had a couple of chances in the first half, hit the woodwork twice through Molyneux and Broadbent. The second half was, I think I described it on air as clunky. Nothing really stuck for either team. There wasn't a massive amount of chances. I think Xander Clark only really had one save from memory to make on his league debut. And it was almost just petering out a little bit, wasn't it? Even in injury time, there wasn't an awful lot going on. Both teams seem to have got to that point where you're almost thinking, well, if you can't win it, don't lose it. But then as Jamie Sterry's ball into the box, even then, the goalkeeper seemed favourite for it. I think Grant McCann admitted afterwards that he's almost turning around to Cliff Byrne and thinking it was a wasted opportunity. But there's Owen Bailey, as he so often has done this season, rising highest, perfect timing for the jump and getting, well, I think it was probably the back of his head on it to glance it into the back of an unguarded net. Brilliant scenes at the end. The Rovers fans who travelled with them so often this season were probably getting fed up of all that travel and sort of different things they've had to fend off this season. But Rovers, I think, good value for it with the amount they had to dig in. And, that one's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that run as well, that, when you say it out loud, I suppose, the 1 in 17, I know it's kind of straddled across a few cup wins as well, but as a whole in 2026, they've started really well, haven't they? That point against Bolton, which on another day they could have held out and got the win. Obviously, cup performances are what they are, really spirited against Southampton second half, and then went to town on Fleetwood, and then I think it was important, wasn't it, to back that up and kind of settle a few nerves as well, getting that win.
Yeah, well, it quite easily could have been 6 points from 6 in the league, couldn't it? They probably did deserve to beat Bolton on New Year's Day, but for a bit of a fluky goal with their only shot on target, and it did sum up where Rovers were at that point in time. Grant made a good point after the game. I think he was getting tired of coming out and saying, well, we've played well and we've won in the cup. And he admitted, didn't he, people weren't necessarily buying it because ultimately the only thing that matters is results. And I think for the dressing room now to have another 3 points on the board and to have that winning feeling back will be big for them. It's the first away win since August, Port Vale in the league, which is an awful long time ago. A clean sheet as well, which settles everybody down, including the new goalkeeper. I think just all in all, if Rovers had come away from Wimbledon with a goalless draw, it would have been, I suppose, described as other away performances have been as a building block. Well, it's much more than that now, isn't it? The fact they went to the end and got their rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a piece on this earlier today about the Sutton similarities to it. Not just the fact that they're South London and they've gone and got a late goal, but obviously the build up to it. McCann speaking about the fake league table, which he obviously worked to real good effect 2 years ago. And then, not think anyone's expecting it to be, bang the same history to repeat itself. But the similarities are there, aren't there? There's certain vibes. Owen Bailey spoke to us, didn't he, about it after the win, saying it just takes a result like that. And I know the Sutton one was only a point in the end, but it stopped the rot at that time. This one kind of gets that first win in a while. And like we say, hopefully it's a platform for better things, especially with an extended league run coming up.
Yeah, they needed something to really spark this second half of the season, didn't they? We've spoken a lot in the last few weeks, almost in preparation for, Rovers always do it better in the second half of the campaign. Although there is the caveat, you're a little bit worried of, have they done it too many times that this season is one? Fingers crossed it is. And that result, I think, can just provide a bit of a springboard. It shows what Rovers are capable of, going to tough places. They had to deal with quite a lot of physicality at Wimbledon, similar to Sutton a couple of years ago. You sort of have to, it's a place where, it's not really a ground you can go to and get the ball down and play. Wimbledon don't really allow that. It was a different type of performance where you knew chances were going to be sort of at a premium. And Rovers just sort of bided the time, didn't rush anything, and it, again, almost accepting that it wasn't going to be pretty. And I think when Grant McCann says things about mini-league tables, and Owen Bailey said afterwards, didn't he, the chances are Rovers would have been top of it on Saturday, depending on results elsewhere. Not many of the teams around them won. So it's just that psychological edge, isn't it? You know, we know this season hasn't gone to plan now, maybe barring the first 5-6 weeks or so. But how can they turn it around? How can they from one side to the other? We finish at the top of this table, then we'll be in League One again next season. That's the message I think Grant McCann's trying to get across to players and fans. It might not be perfect now, but if they stick to their principles and stick to what he's trying to get them to do, then they'll be all right.
Yeah, and obviously we've spoke about him already a few times, but how can you not? You know, and again, you kind of run out of words to describe him, don't you, Bailey? I mean, not only the captain, you know, not only plays in pretty much every position going apart from in goals, but 11 goals now for the season, which is just, you know, and I don't think anyone thinks he's going to stop there. I mean, he could easily end the season, you know, on 15, close to 20, which is just bonkers.
Yeah, and I think I put a tweet out on Sunday morning to sort of say, you know, while ever Rovers have got a captain with the heart and desire of Owen Bailey, then they've got a great chance of staying in League One. We know there's a lot of football to play, but he just epitomises everything you want in a captain. Whatever team you support, if every team had a captain like him, then they'd be doing all right, wouldn't they? I think just his real grit and determination to lead by example. He's still a young captain as well. It was interesting to hear him say, you know, he'd worked with a sports psychologist in the summer, and that's maybe been the key to unlocking this goal scoring run he's been on. I think it's 11 in all competitions, 8 of them headers, and something like 9 of them have come away from home. So he enjoys it on his travels. But I refer back to probably 3 or 4 years ago, and Rovers were in a really tricky position on and off the pitch, probably up until that Sutton game, really, when they were looking for somebody to really lead by example and show the supporters, give the supporters something they could relate to, because they'd not had many players like that over the past few years. It had been a really tricky period up until Grant McCann coming back to the club. But I think now all the supporters, there's a couple of them on the train back on Saturday, sort of talking and chatting about the game, and you can tell they really feel like they can connect with a player like Owen Bailey, because the way he is, the way he speaks to us as media, is really honest, isn't it? And refreshing, really, to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a piece I did on Sunday, I think it was, they're always going to get praised when they're doing well and scoring goals, but it helps that little bit more, doesn't it, when you, like you just said, when they're a bit more approachable and a bit more personal. And if anyone's ever spoke to him, you know, he's such a nice bloke, isn't he? And I think he's someone you want to do well, and that kind of ties in nicely with, obviously, put out on Twitter about asking, you know, for people's questions or topics they want us to discuss. And Johnny G on Twitter, or X, has asked, how much is Bailey worth? So, and there's no right answer to this. Obviously, we hope he's not kind of going anywhere anytime soon, but it's a tough one, that, isn't it, to kind of pin down, because contract-wise, just looking, we were speaking off air, 2027 with an option, so effectively, what's that, 2.5 years left of his, you know, of his contract. So, but then you add in his performances and what he's obviously doesn't get injured, does he? You know, he's I think someone put the other day 118 starts consecutive, which is just mad. So when you put all that into the pot, what's your final figure?
Well, I think it's not a watching. I'll avoid putting a figure on it. I don't want to alert any clubs to maybe a price tag. But I think the key thing is, ultimately, given his contract situation, the fact he's got another 2.5 years, you know, in theory, with that option, he's worth whatever Doncaster Rovers rate him at, because there's no need to sell. He's not running out of contract. You're not thinking, oh, hang on a minute, he's got 12 months left. Should we cash in now? Are we going to get an opportunity to earn that money back? Ultimately, Rovers got him on a free transfer.
Yeah.
So losing any money by holding on to him. And I think you see players go for an awful lot of money nowadays, especially given the fact he's added goals to his game. I think 11 goals from midfield in League One, and it's not as if he plays in that number 10 position or on the wing. I know he has done a little bit in that more advanced role, but the vast majority have been that sort of holding role where arriving from deep or set pieces have been a lot of his goals. I think the power is well and truly in Rovers' hands. They've got a really big asset there. No rush to sell, I'm sure. And I think probably in 12 months' time, the talk will start to become of, can we get him tied down to another long-term contract? Because if you can do that, it sort of shows new recruits or other players that are already in the building, listen, we're serious about, building for the long term here. I think if it was just the 18 months, I think those conversations would start to be had now. But given that he's got that extra 12 months, and it shows the forward planning, doesn't it, Doncaster Rovers, the fact that, and that's not always been there, by the way. There's been occasions in the past, far too many of them, when this type of situation has happened and a contract has just ran down and players have been allowed to leave on a free transfer. That isn't the case now. I think he was awarded the contract when Rovers had just missed out on the playoff. Lost in the playoffs to Crewe.
Yeah.
The same as Luke. They both signed new deals that year, and it just showed that bit of foresight into the future. Of they believed in his potential, didn't they? I think Grant said after the game on Saturday when he first came in, he was probably one of the lowest paid players at the club. He did counter that with he's not now, which was quite amusing at the time. But I think, without putting a figure on it and, sort of saying what price it may be, I think whatever Rovers think it is, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of tax on top of that, given that he's got so long left on his deal and he's so crucial to them. Not to sit on the fence, but fair.
Politicians answer that, Robbie. Good question here from on X from Mike. What do you think the best midfield 3 years? Which is interesting. Obviously, going back to Bailey, kind of if centre half is where it's going to be deployed in the foreseeable, then you've obviously got, and I know Close is injured, but you've got Broadbent, Gotts, Clifton, obviously Darren Robinson to add into the mix. So where would you kind of sit with that? Because that's another position, midfield, where it's kind of, there's been no set trio, has there?
No, and I think probably 2 or 3 months ago I'd have said Broadbent, Bailey, Clifton. I think the last few performances from Robbie Gotts have put him right up there in contention. Like you said already, it depends a lot on where Owen Bailey plays. If he's in that midfield, I'd probably at the minute on form go with Broadbent and Gotts. But if you're dropping Owen Bailey back into centre-back, like we saw happen on Saturday, then Harry Clifton is sort of that man to come in and be one of the three in midfield, isn't he? But I think Gotts' performances recently have been a real positive and a real sort of eye-opener as well, because he had a difficult start to his Rovers career. One reason or another, he was injured and then struggled to get back into the team. And I think probably since Scott brought away, he's almost stood up to be counted and seems like the player that Rovers thought they were signing from Barrow in the summer.
Yeah. I think, it's an interesting one, isn't it, with Robinson as well. He's looked quite bright in his against Fleetwood, and then obviously at Wimbledon when he came on for Broadbent. So I think that's, like you say, I think Bailey plays regardless. That's a given. If it's him in midfield, then I would probably say one of Gotts or Clifton, and then one of Bailey one of Broadbent or Robinson, or even Close when he comes back. I think that'll be interesting to see where he kind of slots in. Obviously, a really nasty injury that he's kind of recovering from. So, there's plenty of options to go at there, isn't there? Next question is from John Coyle. Do you expect them to do any more business in the window? For me, and this is, by the way, a lot of people have asked along the similar lines to this, so may as well cover it all in one go. But I think centre half's kind of the one, isn't it, now, where, and I know Bailey played really well there, but you've still only got 3 recognised centre backs. You lost O'Riordan. That's the area, I think, for me, where if they do anything else, that'll be where it's addressed.
Well, when you look at the goals they've conceded, I think right up there with the most in the division, isn't it? And it's strange how a lot of the answers to these questions involve Owen Bailey from one end or the other, don't they? Because it's, with the midfield question, it depends where you play him. With the recruitment question, it depends where Owen Bailey plays. What I would say is I think Rovers, I would argue, needed an additional centre-half, even if O'Riordan had stayed. I think just in terms of the qualities of the ones that are already there, I think we've discussed on here before, Ricky, that the lack of a real sort of out-and-out leader, somebody like Richard Wood or a Tom Anderson that we saw last season. I know Matty Pearson's sort of that age and has the amount of games under his belt. It's not quite worked out for him in terms of getting a proper run of games under his belt just yet. Rovers looked a lot more secure with Bailey and McGrath at centre-back, didn't they? I think Bailey read the game a lot better when it's in front of him. You know, he's almost like moving out with it, and then he's so good in the air that when long balls are going, even if he's got bigger than him, he's good enough in the air to have that spring to be able to nod it away. For me, I think Rovers do need a centre-back. I think the difficulty is the type of defender they need. It's not often that you get them in January. So a young loanee, for me, wouldn't really add much value.
No.
Rovers might go and get one of those now, and he might be brilliant. So, you know, that's the caveat. However, I think they need somebody of the ilk of a Richard Wood or a Anderson, and Andy Butler if you want to throw it a few more years.
Yeah.
But just somebody who will pull people around and let the, you know, almost a bit of guidance on the pitch. Doesn't have to be the quickest or the flashiest centre back. Just somebody who leads by example, and when you're looking to get out of trouble, can help you every step of the way. Yeah,
I agree. I think someone made the point the other day, and they weren't using this player as an example in terms of as a target, but like an Aidan Flint, you know, someone with that ilk fits into the kind of same, you know, description as the ones you've just listed there, like with experience, but, you know, maybe someone quicker at the side of him, for want of a better phrase. You know, someone's got the legs, whereas he can cajole people. And I think Pearson, many fans kind of thought Pearson would be that, and for whatever reason, he's not turned out to be that. He might still, but so far he hasn't really. I mean, you know, the summer signings, we spoke about this last time, didn't we? You know, the 5 summer signings that were permanent, none of them have really, you know, grasped it, have they, fully? I think Pearson at that point, you know, around Christmas time, had made the most starts of them all, but he's obviously kind of dropped out of contention again. But the problem with that is obviously, you know, your Flints or your experienced players, they're not 10 a penny, are they? And certainly in January, you know, you'd have to be probably taking up the contract fully. You know, teams are not likely to loan them out. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one, that. So yeah, I suppose watch this space on that one. Obviously the window shuts 2nd of February, so still another week or so to go on that one. EJ Wilson on Twitter asks, will any out of contract players be signing deals before the end of the season, do you think? And just looking at the list on screen, to the ones, I suppose the ones that stand out in terms of being out of contract in the summer, James Maxwell, Jack Senior, Jordan Gibson, Billy Sharp, and a few of those do have options in, so there's that caveat. But for you, any of them kind of stand out as needing to pin down? I guess the main ones, the Molyneux, the Baileys, the McGraths, if you like, are already kind of tied down long term, aren't they? Yeah, and I think Grant McCann mentioned after the Bolton game when we were discussing Ian Lawler, I think how that had come about. He mentioned that Ian Lawler was looking for that security, perhaps looking to, I think he had an option on his deal, and he was asking in the build-up to going to Crewe, you know, are you going to take that option? Grant McCann couldn't give him those assurances at that stage because his mind is firmly on the January transfer window. I think he did say that it will probably be February or March when he gets to sit down and have a look at who's got options, who would they want to offer deals to out of the players that are, you know, coming to the end of their current deals. I think it's difficult because while ever Rovers are in the position they are right now, hopefully they're in League One next season. But when you're in a predicament, and they probably had it last year as well, you know, the other way around, where you're almost shopping in a slightly different supermarket, aren't you, if you're in League One to then if you're in League Two? That's no disrespect to the players who are out of contract, but Rovers have got to consider that as well. And come March, they might be in a much more rosy position and you know, be pretty assured that they'll be playing in League One next season, at which time you can start to think, okay, well, you know, we might offer a deal to that player, or we might be able to, you know, come to an agreement with that player where we shake hands and wish them all the best. I think what I would say is about some of those you named, I think there's maybe still work to do to convince maybe the supporter. Take Billy Sharp out of that, you know, with the exception of him. I think still work to do, I think, for the others to maybe convince Grant McCann that they're, you know, it's difficult with the 2 left backs, isn't it? Because you don't want yourself support either. But I think, still work to do. I don't think there's any sort of definite yeses or nos in that list. Billy Sharp's age, I know he won't thank me for saying it, but he may have ideas of what he wants to do
come the end of the season. He's still chasing that 300 goal tally, isn't he? He's only just over a handful away now. So many different reasons why those players may stay or may move on. But I think, come February, March, I'm sure we'll have a much clearer picture of what Grant McCann intends to do. And a lot of it might depend on Rovers' league position at the time. Yeah,
I think he said that, didn't he, the other day? That kind of once the January window's done, and that'll be when they kind of focus on it. But just glancing at the list, every summer, when you're in League 1 and 2, you're always going to get it, aren't you? It's a big turnover. You have a lot of players out of contract. But looking at the list, I mean, so the full ones are out of contract in summers. You've got Maxwell, Senior, Faulkner, Clifton, Close, Sabara, Westbrook, Flint, Gibson, Hurst. There's not too many that jump off the page there and go, they're key players. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if they're having to, tie down half the full strength 11. So I think that's a positive, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of them are out on loan, aren't they? For whether it's the younger players or the lads who've been on the fringes and have gone out to play some football. It's a chance like 6 months to put themselves in the shop window. The likes of Sabara, Hurst and Westbrook, I'd be very surprised, with all respect to those lads, if they're at Doncaster Rovers next season. I think for the others, the ones who are still in and around it now, Jack Senior's had a great few weeks, hasn't he? He's added some real bite at left back to Doncaster Rovers' sort of left-hand side. He's proven a point himself of why he's worthy of a new contract. It's almost chopped and changed that left back berth, hasn't it, for the last couple of years, really, since Senior came in. But I think, the long list is not an awful lot that jumps out of you. It's not the worst sort of turnaround in the world for Rovers. If they are in League One, they've had a year at it, haven't they? And almost, hopefully by that point, established themselves in the third tier. And it gives them a bit of a head start to crack on with the recruitment for the summer as well.
And lastly, we'll go with this particular question. A certain Tom Biltcliffe, never heard of him. Best fresh food so far this season. Now, another topic we were discussing before. I mean, I know you weren't at Spurs, so I wasn't massively impressed. I was expecting a lot better from Spurs, I have to say. And if anything, I actually prefer I'm going to say, a bit controversial. I thought Grimsby's food was more, and that sounds ridiculous saying it out loud, it was more like a wedding buffet kind of food. Sandwiches, you got quiches, you got pork pies, got a bloke who's done it himself. I'll have that all day long for me over your gastro fancy nosh, because half the time it's just a pie, isn't it, at most grounds we've gone to.
Yeah, it is, and I would say Huddersfield was good start of the season. They were a bit more flashy than just your standard pucker pie. It was sort of home cooked, and they looked after you. I think Stockport was a little bit different. It was like the Nando's chicken, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just after Christmas. So I reckon, Stockport or Huddersfield probably the top two for me this season. As you said, didn't do Spurs, so can't really comment on that. There's a few, still a lot of the season to go, Tom. So go too early with that question. Maybe it's one we can revisit come May when we've done a few more. I know Rovers have got Wickham in a few weeks, and that tends to be a pretty good one. But I think for me, Stockport and Huddersfield are the good ones. It's good to see that Tom's got a phone signal down under as well.